Hi friends, this will be a bonus video about using particle effects to make twinkling stars, which is not something that everybody's going to have time to get into. So the first thing I'm going to do up here in the top, I'm going to come over and create a new composition. It's going to be composition name Twinkle, right? Twinkle Stars. And all of that stuff I'm leaving the same. I only want about 30 seconds of twinkling stars just because it'll take some time to render and I don't want to give you guys too much render time on this. So it'll be something you can play with. So now I've created a new blank composition called Twinkle Stars. I just hit save. Let's come in and add a solid. So a solid is just basically a rectangle. It's going to be dark gray. That's totally fine. It's going to be comp size. It's totally fine. It doesn't really make a difference. We just need a solid in order to apply a particle effect. Okay? So now we can come up to effect at the top, which is very similar to what's happening over here, right? It's just in a menu. When we've selected this layer, now I can come into effect and we're going to go down to simulation. And we're going to choose Particle Systems 2. Okay, so I just chose Particle Systems 2. And I applied that effect to my gray solid, okay? What a particle effect does is it's like a little fireworks, right? It's basically a hose that's throwing particles out, okay? Your computer may not be this fast. This is just the situation with mine, all right? So we're gonna do a lot of change actually with this particle system from the defaults in order to turn this pile of exploding particles into twinkling stars, all right? You can do tricks with particle systems and particle generators like smoke, right? Clouds, right? All kinds of stuff particle generators can do. In this case, or you can just make, exploding fireworks or hoses or rain or whatever, right? In our case, we're going to make twinkling stars. And the way we're going to start to do that is we're going to have, instead of these lines all shooting out, we're going to change the particle itself, which is in this little guy, from a line to a star. So now it's a hose of stars, which is not really better. We're going to also change a couple of other things going on, right? I don't think we need them to ever get this big. And if you look in these particle situations, you have a birth size and a death size. I think I'm going to keep them about the same size their whole life, right? It's going to take a second to update, but eventually you'll see now they're all much smaller. We could even go smaller than that, right? Teeny, teeny, tiny stars is not a bad thing in this case, right? It's going to look more realistic in our landscape. I mean, these are still kind of magical just because they're a little crisscross. So I think that's maybe where we want to be, right? The other thing I'm going to look at over here, right, is our birth to death color map. These are all different options, right, in terms of what colors the little stars come, okay? So if we have a birth to death color map, it's starting out the birth color, it's ending right when it fades out, the death color. I'm going to just change the birth color to white and the death color to like a very light yellow. So it's not going to have as much variation, but it's doing something, right? You absolutely do not have to do that, right? You could just leave them white and have birth to death, whatever, be white. We are still shooting off a fire hose of stars though, which is not really what we want, okay? So that'll be the next thing I want to play with, and that is going to be in the physics category. So all of these control the way that the particles move, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is turn gravity off. Now you'll notice they're exploding straight out, right? So we're in a big force field now. And that's based on velocity here, right? So if I were to change that to half, then they would move half as fast. And if I change it to 0, they don't move at all, right? They're just sitting there in the middle. that's kind of what I want, but I need to change now the producer in order to make the size of the spread fill my screen, right? So now by changing the radius X and radius Y, I can make these twinkling stars fill my whole screen, right? So now, even just doing that, we have twinkling stars that fill the screen. This is probably, I don't know about you, too much, right? This is probably too much twinkling, unless we're in some sort of a razzle-dazzle dance number. This is probably too much twinkling for like a realistic sky, and we don't want it to get crazy like this. So the way that we can adjust that is, and get fewer stars, is we can change the birth rate from 4, let's change it down to 1, okay? So now I'm getting way fewer stars when I make my birth rate 1 instead of 4. They're scattered all over the screen, they're nicely dispersed, and there are way fewer of them, right? The other thing I might change is the longevity. I might let the star stay on longer. So right now it's staying on for 2 seconds. Maybe I'll have it stay on for 5 seconds. Now I'm getting more stars and the twinkle is slower, right? I'm gonna even make my birth rate less because I don't need that many stars, okay? So now you'll still see each star like pops on, twinkles, fades out, right? And it's just looping that little section, which is why it looks like you're seeing a repeat. As we zoom out, we see the big picture, okay? We are gonna look at a couple more things, right? So birth, longevity, great. There's something else. Size variation, opacity map has fade out. And I think we want it to fade in and out. So that instead of just fading out, now they fade in and out, and we're getting a much more gentle twinkle, which I think is nice. Let's see what that looks like close up. Oh no, it's too close. I think we have to zoom out. Yeah. So they're just kind of fading in, fading out, right? Play with it though, right? Because you may want it even smaller, right? You may want less size variation, or you might want, I don't know, all kinds of different options. Fewer stars, reduce the birth rate. Slower twinkle, increase the longevity, right? This density, you can space the whole world out more or less, right? As long as you're hitting the full edges, then you're in a good spot, okay? These are all fun things to play with. So I would build this whole Twinkle Star thing, okay? If I'm using it for my show, for example. I'm gonna really ramp down my birth rate. I'm gonna make it not that many stars at a time. Yeah, let's do something like this, okay? And then I'm actually gonna pre-render this little star sample, and then I can bring it in as a layer in my other project, right? So pre-rendering means to sort of flatten, to do all of the work of making the picture for each frame, flatten it into a movie. By doing this first and then bringing it into my twinkle thing, my sunrise to sunset, I'm saving my computer some stress. So I'm letting my computer render the stars portion first, and then bringing it into sunrise to sunset. If I have a very fast computer, I don't have to pre-render. I can just take this and drop it straight into sunrise to sunset, no problem. And this dark gray solid layer can just sit in my general After Effects file, and all of that rendering can happen at the end. But it's good practice to pre-render, I find, because I never have a fast enough computer. I also like to have my layers separate so that I can, take a layer in or out Like I could take this stars layer and just kind of throw it in during tech, see what it looks like without having to re-render the whole project, okay? So to render, I'm gonna, and this is something I'll go into with everybody else in the next video. I'm just gonna come here where it says add to render queue. My output module is gonna be high quality with alpha, okay? Output 2, it's gonna go into my folder on my desktop in the project files, I guess. Yeah, in the project files. Let's save it there. Allow that, please. Thank you. Okay. And I'm just going to make sure my high quality with alpha is what I think it is. Yeah, so it's a QuickTime ProRes video with an alpha channel. That's exactly what I want. And then I say render. And it's going to come up with some amount of time. My video is rendering pretty quickly. This is a pretty fast computer. It's going to tell you how long it takes. You can't do anything else while your computer renders. If it's going to be a long time, walk away, live your life, and then come back, right? Do this over a break. But you'll get a time remaining countdown clock here on the end. And then it makes that little sound, which means you're done. And now I can bring it back into my project from that folder, my Twinkle Stars. I can bring back into the project and add it as a layer into this After Effects deal, right, that I've been working on. So I'm going to just stack it on top of my night sky, and it's a little too short, right? But you'll see now I got these little twinkly stars that come out, right? And they're going to just twinkle their little hearts away in my project, right? So now my sky is a twinkling. And because I rendered with alpha, that's something that I told you to do, but I didn't explain. It's actually a see-through video. So I rendered with alpha, and that means that it kept the transparency on that Twinkle Stars deal, right? So if I click on this little grid, this is what it actually was creating, right? It looks like black so we can see what we're doing, but it was actually a see-through video, which is just little white twinkling stars on an invisible background. So by rendering it with an alpha, I have kept it transparent so that when I bring it into this project, it's just an invisible rectangle with twinkling stars, okay? So that is how you create a particle effect twinkly star layer for your sunrise to sunset. I'm going to save this, Command S, and then I'll talk about rendering this out in the end.